Hey everyone, and welcome to part 4 in our Power BI for Beginners series. My name is Brad, and in today's video, we'll be incorporating some of the design principles I covered in my last video to transform the report we started back in video 2. We'll create some new visuals, use some slicers, and dig into more of the functionality behind Power BI. Now, if you haven't watched part 3 yet, I'd recommend going back and taking a look so you don't miss out on those topics. All right, let's take a look. So back in video 2, Query Editor and First Visuals, we took a look at some of the functionality of the Query Editor, and then we left off with a couple basic visuals on our page here. In today's session, I'm going to walk through how we go from this to this. We're utilizing more of our data fields and incorporating some of those design principles to build out a dashboard page, a page focused on product-related data, and a page focused on sales-related data. You can see from these updated pages that we've clearly made a lot of changes regarding the color scheme, the visuals, and the layout in general, and all of this was actually done outside of the Power BI report UI through Canva. Now, if you're not familiar with Canva, it's a fantastic design resource that you can utilize not only for Power BI report templates, but for website layouts, presentations, marketing materials, and a whole host of other tools. And the way that I found the template I used in our report is by searching for Power BI dashboards and clicking through the designs until I settled on one that I thought fit our need. Eventually, I landed here. And the great thing about Canva is that I can go in and add or remove or edit anything that I want in the template. So we can remove all the existing metrics, move some things around, edit the navigation toolbar a little bit, and eventually we end up with a page that looks like this. Now, before I export, I want to make sure my report dimensions are going to match up with my template dimensions. So if I go back to my report and open up the format pane, drop down Canvas settings, I can take note of the dimensions that I've got here. Once I've got those, I head back into Canva and make sure the downloaded file dimensions match up. I use PNG as my file type and then click download. After the image is done downloading, I can import that into my report as the new background. So at this stage, I've already thought through what metrics are going to be populating the page and how I want to organize the report. And I did this by working with the data at hand and building out my visuals on separate tabs using a first draft approach. So for me, I need to have things out on the canvas before I know how I want them to be organized. I also know I want the first page to be sort of a dashboard overview, and then separate pages dedicated to product and sales focused metrics. And knowing this, I edited the template in Canva to account for dashboard, products, and sales pages, and a navigation bar over to the left. For right now, we'll go ahead and start working on building out the first page. Now, the first thing we'll do is add a title to our page by adding a text box, and we'll go ahead and title this page Dashboard. Next, I know we want our users to be able to filter the data on the page by date and by product, so I'm going to add in 2 slicers for those. So the first thing we'll do is go over to our slicer visual and click on that to pull one in to our canvas. We'll resize a little bit here, and the first slicer that I'm going to create is for date. So I'll come over to our data table, click on date to pull that in. So that's looking okay right now. I'll maybe do a little resizing and reformatting here to clean this up a little bit. So let's go ahead and add a title. We'll call this date selector, and we'll center that, make it bold, and we'll just make the font a little bit easier to read here as well. And I kind of like this little divider, so why don't we go ahead and add that as well. These date numbers are a little hard to see, so let's go ahead and bump those up in size. We'll go to values and increase our font size. Let's see what 12 looks like. That looks okay. Maybe a little more. And just a little bit more. Trying to get these dates centered a little bit in our selector without this visual getting out of hand. Okay, and the other thing I see here is this little date label that I want to remove, and that's actually our slicer header. So let's turn that off. Perfect, so that helps with the sizing and spacing a little bit. Okay, we've got our date selector here. I think it's kind of difficult to see against this white background, so I'm going to add a border to this. Size and style, we've got a visual border option, so let's add that in. And that looks good, but I'd like to make the corners rounded so it kind of matches the rest of our visual backgrounds here. So let's go back into that. We'll open up visual border and rounded corners. Let's start with 20. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. So now let's move on to our product slicer, and we'll pull in our visual here, and I'm going to resize it so that it matches our date slicer. Move that over a little bit, trying to align it right here with this blue visual background. And then what we're going to use for this slicer is product. So we'll pull that in. And right now we've got a selection, a checkbox selection for our slicer. And what I'd like to have instead is a drop-down menu where you can see these selections. So let's go ahead and find that real quick. We'll change this from vertical list to drop-down instead. And when we open that up, now we have our different products listed in this drop-down. But I'd like for this formatting to match our date selector here. So let's go ahead and make those adjustments. We'll add a title. We'll call this product selector. And I want to match the font size, which is a 20. Adjust that, make it center aligned, make it bold, and then add our divider as well. And for our values, let's go ahead and increase those so it's a little easier to read. And our slicer header we're going to turn off as well. Make that our selections bold. Maybe increase the size here so it's a little easier to read. There we go. I think 16 works well. All right, and then similar to date selector, let's add in our border. Turn that on. And then our rounded corners, we'll make 20. Okay, great. So we've got our two slicers added in now. Next, we're going to populate our 4 KPI positions here with the metrics that the business group has identified as the priority. And those are total profit, total sales, total gross sales, and total units sold. And the way we can get started here is by utilizing the card visual within Power BI. So we'll click on card visual, pull that into the space here. And we are going to start with total profit as our first KPI. So I've got our profit field over on the right-hand side. I click to pull that in, and right now we've got 16.89 million. So let's go ahead and add a title to this card. And we will call this simply total profit. Excellent. And let's make this bold, center aligned. And we'll increase the font size. We'll start with 30 and see how that looks. In keeping aligned with our slicer visuals, we're also going to add a divider there. That's looking good. All right, so one adjustment I'd like to make here is instead of the 16.89 decimal number that we have here, I'd like to reformat this so it shows as a currency so that we have our dollar sign ahead of our value here. And one way we can do that is by coming over to profit, clicking on that field, and then we have our formatting options up here. So I'll click on format and I'm going to change this to currency. That's looking good. And instead of having 2 decimal spots, I'm going to limit it to just 1. Perfect. Another adjustment I'd like to make to our visual is taking out the background so that it just shows the blue visual placeholder that we have behind it. And that's relatively easy. We just have our KPI card selected, and I come into our size and style dropdown and just turn the background off. Perfect. All right, so let's go ahead and we'll duplicate this for our other KPIs. So for total sales, total gross sales, and total units sold. And actually, I can actually select our visual here and just hit Control-C and then Control-V, and that will copy our card. So with our total profit KPI card selected here, I'm going to update this for total sales. So we've got our sales metric up here at the top, and I'm just going to go ahead and pull this field over and put it on top of sum of profit. And now we have our sum of sales. So let's go ahead and update our title here. I can do that by double clicking, and we'll just call this total sales. And actually, I would like to have this sum of profit label removed. So that's our category label. Let's go ahead and turn that off. And we'll do the same thing for our sales as well. Okay, to align the formatting of sales with profit, let's go ahead and update our field here, our sales field, to be formatted as a currency. And then we'll change our decimal places to just 1. And while I'm here, I think I'd like to increase the size of this value here. So let's go ahead and do that. Go to call out value, and let's boost this up. We'll try 55. We'll go with 55 for now. Let's see how that looks. Okay, great. So let's do another copy paste, and we'll add in total gross sales and total units sold. Okay, great. We're looking good here so far, but I'd like to go ahead and add in a secondary visual to each of these, which is just a simple line chart. It kind of shows the trend of how each of these metrics has been performing over time based on the selection in our date slicer here. So let's go ahead and add in our line chart right here. And we'll just place this right here right now, but I'm going to want to plot total profit over time on this line chart. So let's go ahead and pull in date as our x-axis. Change this from a date hierarchy to just date. Then our y-axis is going to be profit. So let's go ahead and pull that in. All right. So we'll shrink this down a little bit, and let's pull up our KPI card. Okay. And for this, again, I'm just kind of interested in showing trends. I don't necessarily need any of the axis values. I don't really need a title because it's pretty obvious what this is plotting, since I've included it right underneath total profit. So we're going to go ahead and first find the background to remove. Perfect. And then we will remove our title. We don't need that. The x-axis, everything is turned off, so that looks good. Y-axis, I'm going to turn off the values, turn off our title. So perfect. So again, we just have this a nice little visual here that just kind of supplements the total profit visual above it. Another adjustment I'll make here is just by turning this line to black. So we'll go down to our lines, our color, and let's just change this to black. Okay, that's looking better. Let's also add in our trend line. So we'll turn that on, and let's change this color so that it doesn't necessarily match our line. We'll make it a little bit lighter. Let's see how this looks. Maybe a little bit darker than that. Okay, there we go. I think that's looking good. Maybe we can move down this a little bit. We'll just make some adjustments there. Okay, so I think this is looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and duplicate the same thing for our total sales, total gross sales, and total units sold KPIs. All right, that's looking pretty good. So let's move on. So the business group has also expressed a desire to see how sales have been trending over time to help with their forecasting going forward. And Power BI has a couple tools that will be really helpful in visualizing this. And we can start by adding a line chart to our canvas. And we're going to place that right here. And so what we're going to plot out here is just our date and our sales. So we'll add in date. Again, we'll update this to date instead of date hierarchy. And then we'll pull sales into our x-axis. And great, we've got that plotted. Okay, so let's do some formatting adjustments here. We'll go ahead and adjust our title so that it will be sales by date. And then we know we're going to add in a forecast as well. So we'll include that. Let's center it, make this bold. And let's increase our font size maybe to 30, see how that looks. Okay, I think that's looking good. And we'll turn on our divider. So one note here, I included the little currency symbol here, just so it's clear going forward that we are plotting sales amount instead of units sold. So we've got a currency metric, and then we've just got a units metric. And so for all the visuals, I'm going to add some consistency and clarity by including this currency symbol whenever we're plotting sales, monetary sales versus just units. And then of course we added in our forecast to the title. We'll add in the forecast aspect of this visual here in just a moment. So some other adjustments to make. We don't need a title for our axis, for either of our axes really. So let's go ahead and take those out. We'll remove on the x-axis because it's already pretty clear what these dates down here are representing. And for y, we'll take that out as well. I think at this point these are kind of hard to read, the labels on the axes. So let's go ahead and boost those up a little bit. Maybe we'll go to 14. Let's make these bold so we can see them a little easier. And I think that's okay. Let's make these black. And perfect. That looks a little better. Let's do the same for x-axis. 14, we'll make these bold, and then the color will be black. Let's see how that looks. All right, I think that's looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and get rid of our background entirely. So that's gone. We also have these grid lines in here. We definitely don't need those. So let's turn off grid lines. Okay. And I'm going to adjust our line color here so that it's black. All right, that's looking good. Another adjustment I'm gonna make to our line is instead of having the line style is solid, or actually, let's go ahead and change this to smooth as well. There we go. So just a little different design here. You can choose to keep the line style, what's this called? Linear as opposed to smooth. The step looks, I just don't think this looks great plotted out on our line chart. So we're just gonna change this to smooth. And while I'm on this, I'm actually gonna update these 4 line charts to have the same smooth line formatting. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. Okay, I think that looks a little bit better. Back to our line chart down here. Let's go ahead and add in a trend line. And that's looking pretty good. So the last part that we'll add in is our forecast. Let's go ahead and turn that on. So the forecast feature in our format pane over here, this allows us to plot forecasted values on the line chart based on some of the criteria here. Now, many actual businesses will already have their own forecasting methods and forecasting data table that you can connect to pull into the report. But this forecast option over here can be utilized if needed. All right, I'm going to change our forecast length to just 5 periods. I'll apply that. And all right, I think that's looking pretty good. Okay, the final visual we're going to add to our first page here is just a simple pie chart displaying the share of sales by country. So we'll add in our pie chart to our visual. Go ahead and resize this. Perfect. And let's pull in country as our legend and sales as our values. So again, I'm going to remove the background. Let's go ahead and update our title here to be sales by country. Let's center that. We'll update our font size to 30 so it matches the others. Make that bold. And add in our divider as well. One adjustment that I can also make, we have country as our legend here, and that's taking up a pretty good size of our overall visual area. So I'm going to update that so that instead of a legend off to the side, we're just gonna have each country show up next to its own metric. So we can do that by turning our legend off, and then our detail labels, we're gonna go down to the label contents, and let's go ahead and just do category and data value. Okay, that looks much better. Let's go ahead and update the size of these labels so they're a little easier to read. Make them bold and black so they pop out. All right. Update this to 14 and see how that looks. Okay, so I think this looks pretty good. The only other thing that I see that we can adjust is that all of our labels here, Canada, France, Germany, and Mexico, are pretty short and fit within our visual area pretty nicely. But the United States of America is much longer than these other labels, so I'd like to try and adjust this somehow so that it fits a little bit better. Now, I could resize our visual or resize the canvas, but I really don't want to do that. So instead what I'm going to do is use the Power Query Editor to replace all instances of United States of America with just USA, which will free up a bunch of space and make our visual look a whole lot better here. So to do that, let's go ahead and head over to Transform Data. That will pull up our Power Query Editor. And over in our Power Query editor, I'm just going to select this country column, and we'll go up to transform, and finally replace values. So the value to find is going to be United States of America. And we are replacing that with just USA. All right, and we can see the values are updated. So let's go ahead and close and apply. Great, and we can see the visual updates automatically. Looks much better, fits much better. Maybe we can increase the value size. I think 16 is looking good. All right, so that's good for our first page. Let's go ahead and update this tab to say dashboard as well. The next page in this report will be products. And I've already determined the visuals that I want here based on my conversations with the business group and some draft work completed earlier. And based on that work, I've created a custom template in Canva that I've exported and loaded in to be the background image for this products page. So let's go ahead and add in our products title to this page. And we can easily do that by just going back to the dashboard tab and clicking on this visual, press Control-C, and Control-V to copy, and I'm just going to replace this with products. Perfect. And we also want to include our slicers on this tab, and we'll do the same thing. We'll come back to our date selector, copy that, paste it right in. For syncing visuals, I don't want selections on this slicer to affect the visuals on the dashboard tab, so I'm going to select Don't Sync. And we'll do the same thing for product selector slicer, and we won't sync that either. Okay, great. So the first visual we want to create is a line chart showing product sales over time. We'll go ahead and pull in our line chart and set that here. We'll use our date field as our x-axis. Change this to date instead of hierarchy. Sales will be our y-axis, and then we'll add product in as our legend right now. So this is looking good so far. I'm going to go ahead and skip through bolding the axes and increasing the font size a little bit. There we go. Now we've got that sorted. One thing that I'm noticing here that I'd like to change is this legend. So just looking at this visual now, even if I increase the font size of this legend, it's going to be hard to just quickly look at this visual and see where each product is performing. So one thing that we can do is turn off our legend and then turn on series labels down here. So let's do that, and then we'll increase the font size to make it a little bit easier to read. We'll make it bold, change the color to black. So I think that does a better job of enabling you to see how the products or categories are performing just by quickly glancing at the visual. Finally, let's go ahead and add our title up here, and we will call this product sales by date. That looks good. And I think our final step here will be to remove our background. Perfect. Let's go ahead and maybe resize this just a little bit so you can read our values a little bit better. Okay, I think that's looking good. Our next visual over to the right is going to be units sold over time. So this is going to help us address another business group need, which is to see how unit quantities are performing over time. Let's go ahead and add in a line chart. We'll pull date into the x-axis again, update the hierarchy, and units sold into our y-axis. Okay, first formatting item will be to update our title here, and we'll call this units sold by date, and we are also going to add in a forecast component, so I'll include that in the title as well. go ahead and also reformat our axes. And let's also go ahead and update our lines here to be rounded. And we'll add in a trend line. And as I mentioned before, we also want to add in our forecast as well. We'll modify the forecast to just be 5 periods. We'll apply that, and let's go ahead and remove the background as well. And finally, we'll just do a little bit of resizing to match the visual size next to us. Great. Moving on, we're going to add in a visual to display how each product's sales are performing across every country. So I know we're going to want to use a bar chart so that we can compare volumes, but I'm going to need to group products by each country. We can do this by using a clustered column chart. So I'm going to add that into our space here. All right, we'll pull country into our x-axis, sales into our y-axis, and then product into our legend. And we'll go ahead and bold everything out, remove the background, and update the title. And finally, during our discovery sessions with the business group, we saw that sales discounts and discount percentages were included in our data set. And the business group expressed a desire to see those discounts in aggregate for each product. And we can easily accommodate that by adding in a pie chart and then pulling product into our legend and discounts into our values. So let's go ahead and add in our pie chart visual. We'll add product in as our legend and discounts into our values. I'll skip ahead through the formatting. All right, our page is looking good here. Going to make some adjustments to our slicers just to make sure that those interactions are working. Looks like they are. Try our product selector, and it does look like all of our visuals are updating based on our selections. So I think we're ready to move on to the sales page. Our final page is titled Sales, and I've gone ahead and added our page title, which is sales, and also copy pasted in our date selector and product selector slicers from the other tabs. Our business group stated that they absolutely needed to see a quick KPI of the current quarter's profits, a KPI of the previous quarter's profits, and then a KPI to show the difference in either growth or decline. These 3 placeholders up here were designed with those KPIs in mind. Since we know they're critical, we want to place them in this premium real estate area in the upper left of our canvas. Now, we do have a profit field already in our table, but we don't have a great way to show profit in the way that the business group needs it. So to resolve that, we're going to create a couple new measures around quarterly profits. Depending on how many measures you're adding to your report, it's generally a best practice to create those measures within a table that's separate from your dataset tables. We can do that by going up to our Home tab and clicking on Enter Data. From here, we can rename our table to something like Measures, and then click Load. This will add the table to our data pane over on the right, and then we can click the 3-button menu to add a new measure. So the first measure that I'm going to create will be for the current quarter's profit. And I'll go ahead and type out the DAX for that, and then we'll come back and review what's going on. So in order to calculate the current quarter's profit, we need to first define a few variables in our script. And the first is max date. And we're going to set that to the max date that is found in our date field of our data set. The next variable is current quarter, and that will be defined using the quarter function. This is going to examine the value in max date and give us the quarter of that date. Finally, we'll also define a current year variable using the year function in a similar way as the quarter function. After that, we write out the actions of our script, and we want to return SUMX. Now, SUMX differs from sum in that SUMX iterates through every row of a table to complete the calculation, as opposed to sum that simply calculates across a single column. Within SUMX, we want to filter the financials table to where the quarter of the date is equal to our current quarter variable defined earlier, as well as our year of the date being equal to the current year variable defined earlier. We'll close out our filter and include the profit field to finish the sumX function. We close the script out and hit enter, and our new measure now populates our measures table. Let's pull this measure into a card visual and we can see our amount. Now you may want to manually check this measure to make sure it's calculating correctly, and we can do that by pulling in a table visual and then pulling in our date and our profit fields. We'll adjust the date hierarchy, and in the filters for date, I'm going to select these final three, which will comprise the current quarter based on the dates that we have in our table. And after I make those filter selections, you can see that the total profit here looks like it's equaling the KPI card profit that we have on the side. So everything looks good with our new measure. Now let's go ahead and create another measure for the previous quarter's profits. So a similar approach to the DAX here. We've got our max date variable declared, as well as current quarter and current year. But now we're going to add in variables for previous quarter and previous year. We'll define previous quarter with an if function that subtracts 1 from the current quarter variable. Now if that equals 0, that means the current quarter is quarter 1, and the previous quarter would be 4. Otherwise, previous quarter will be defined as current quarter minus 1. For previous year, we'll use another if function to do pretty much the same thing. Evaluate the current quarter minus 1. And if that equals 0, then the previous year variable will be defined as the current year minus 1. Otherwise, previous year and current year will be the same. Now, once we've locked in this new measure, let's go ahead and pull in a KPI card visual and add our measure to see what the value is. And we can check this by going back to our check table here. We will deselect current quarter and instead select the previous quarter, and it looks like our totals are matching up. So it looks like our measure is good to go. For our last measure, we simply want to hold the value for the current quarter's profit minus the previous quarter's profit. And instead of creating this measure in the same manner as the other two by using DAX, we can do this quickly by selecting New Quick Measure in the Measures table menu. For a calculation, we'll go with subtraction, and our base value will be our current quarter profit measure, and our value to subtract will be the previous quarter profit. Let's go ahead and click Add, and we see the new measure is populated up here. Now I'm going to adjust this name, and we'll just call this profit difference. Let's close out our quick measure pane and add in a new KPI card to check the difference here. And we'll pull in our profit difference measure, and 4.41 minus 2.74 is indeed 1.67. So now that we've got our measures created and our cards on the canvas, let's go ahead and add them to the visual placeholders up here. Get rid of our check table and adjust the size. So for this card, I want to add a title, and we'll call this Current Quarter Profit. Add in our formatting and take out our background. I do also want to remove the category label, and let's adjust the size of our title here. All right, I think that looks good. In the next KPI slot, we are going to show our previous quarter profit measure. And to do that, I'm just going to copy paste this card that we already created, center it, and drag our previous quarter profit measure into the field. And we see the card update. I'll go ahead and change the title, and we should be good here. For the last card, I'll do the same process, copy paste this card, and update the field. Now, one final piece of formatting that I'd like to add in here is with our profit change card. So I'd actually like this metric to be in green font if the profit change is positive, and red font if the profit change is negative. And we can do that by opening our format pane. And for the callout value, next to color, we have our conditional formatting icon, and we will go to rules. The profit difference field is the field that we want to base this formatting on. And then for our rules, if the value is greater than or equal to, change this to 0, and less than max, then we want this to appear green. So I'll choose a green color. That one looks good. Let's go ahead and add a new rule. If the value is greater than or equal to minimum and less than 0, we want this to appear red. So we'll go with this red color. Click OK, and we can see our metric updates. We have a positive profit change, so the text appears in green. Similar to our sales by date line chart on our dashboard page, we're going to include a profit by date plus forecast line chart here. Let's go ahead and add the visual to our canvas and resize it. Similar to our sales by date line chart on our dashboard page, we're going to include a profit by date plus forecast line chart here. Let's go ahead and add the visual to our canvas and resize it. Then we'll pull in date to our x-axis and profit to our y-axis. Let's go ahead and modify the formatting here to stay consistent with our other line charts by rounding the lines, adding in our trend line and our forecasting. We'll make sure the text is bold, and we'll title this Profit by Date plus Forecast. Our next visual will address our business group need to quickly see the average profit by product. Now we could add separate KPI cards for each average profit metric, but I'm going to go with a clustered bar chart so I can always keep my products ranked from highest to lowest profit average. So let's pull in our visual, and we will add product to our y-axis and profit to our x-axis. And when we add in our profit, we want to make sure we're displaying the average and not the sum or aggregate. So let's right-click on our field and then click on Average. Now we can add some customization to our bar chart here by conditionally formatting our bars to different colors. And one way we could do this is by applying a gradient color scheme so that the products with higher average profit are green in color, and products on the lower end will have red bars. Let's go to our format pane and click on bars. We'll make sure our apply settings to dropdown is set to all categories. And then underneath color, we can click on the function icon. In this menu, let's make sure our format style equals gradient. And the field we'll base this coloring on is average of profit. The summarization is average, and empty values will be formatted as 0. For our lowest value, let's set the color to red. And for our highest value, we'll set the color to green. Click OK, and we can see the color changes have been implemented. Let's make sure we've got our title added as well, average profit by product. Another thing I'm going to add to this visual are data labels at the end of each of these bars. And we can do that by going to data labels and turning those on. And we see that these are a little hard to read, so I'm going to go ahead and adjust the values. And we can see that now those are much easier to read. All right, the next visual we'll create is a simple table that will quickly show us the average gross sales, average COGS or cost of goods sold, average discount, and average profit for each product. We'll also add in a background color gradient to our values so we can quickly see how each product is performing in each category relative to the others. Let's go ahead and add in our table. and then we'll pull in our fields as columns, starting with product. Then we'll pull in gross sales, COGS, discount, and profit. And for each of these, we will right-click and change the calculation to average. To add in the gradient background color, let's head to the Format pane and click on Cell Elements. I'm going to skip the product series and go to Average Gross Sales, then turn background color on and select the formatting icon. This process will be the exact same as we did for the average profit by product bar chart, so I'll skip through those steps. Okay, we've got our background all formatted, and you can see how the gradient helps us determine how the products are performing quicker than it would take us to read through each number and rank them. And depending on the performance distribution or the business group's preferences, you could choose to sort this table by one of the average metrics. Say if average profit was the critical indicator, then we could sort by that column. Or we could choose to sort this table alphabetically by product. This is an example of when feedback from your users will come in handy. All right, let's make sure we also add in our title, average product performance. Finally, we've got our last visual to be added, and that's going to be profit and sales by product. For this one, we're going to use a clustered bar chart because I'd like to be able to show profit and sales grouped together for each product. Let's add in our visual, then pull product into the y-axis and profit and sales into our x-axis. Since profit has been the critical metric for most of the visuals on this page, we'll go ahead and sort our axis by profit descending. I'll also update the formatting of the visual and maybe change up the bar colors as well. All right, back to our dashboard overview page here. And one final thing I'd like to add to the report is some helpful navigation. So when we decided to use this background template, we included icons for the different pages. And I'd like to modify our report so that when the user clicks one of these icons, it sends them to the corresponding page in the report. And we can add in that functionality by first going up to the Insert tab and clicking on Button and Blank. And we see our button gets populated up here in the corner. So we're going to pull this down and resize it so it fits over our products icon. All right, with that button still selected, we're going to head over to our Format pane, open that up, and within Format Button, we're going to turn on Action, drop this down. Our type is going to be Page Navigation, and then our destination, since we're doing the Products button, is going to be Products. So we'll set that. So one other thing that I want to do is if we click off this button, we can see that it still has a border. So I want to go ahead and remove that by going to Button Style and turning off our border. So now our button is hidden, but when the user hovers over this with their cursor, then we'll be able to see the hand come up there. And right now, while we're in just our report mode, if we hold Control and click, we can see that the navigation actually sends us to the products page. Now, instead of having to do this 2 more times for the other pages, we can actually just click this, copy it, and paste it on our other 2 pages. So using that same process, we can go ahead and create buttons for our dashboard page and sales page as well. All right, so just some final thoughts here. While we've definitely improved our report since video 2, I would not consider this delivery ready. What we've got here is a really solid template, a solid beginning that can still be modified to update the color scheme or to incorporate a company's logo and branding. This could be a good first draft to take to the business group to make sure that the layout, KPIs, and data visualizations are aligning with their vision and their needs from an insights and reporting perspective. We're not so far down the road here that requests and enhancements are going to force us to totally redo all our hard work thus far. And we're also assuming that we've had a couple conversations already with the business group to understand their reporting needs. So if we feel like we don't have those details yet and building a report feels like a shot in the dark, we need to go back to the business group and potentially the data administrators to make sure we can get a clear picture of the business's needs and what metrics are available to us from the data administrators. So we'll go ahead and stop there for today. As always, if you have any questions about this content or would like the BIX team to cover a topic in a future video, please leave a comment below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to stay updated on future videos, and thanks for watching.